Hello again. When you first start learning to play the guitar, one of the first things that you learn is how to get the guitar tuned up. And you learn that it's tuned from low to high: E, A, D, G, B, and E. What I want to talk about in this video is other ways to tune your guitar. Now that might sound a bit paradoxical. You think, well, there's a right way to tune the guitar, so why would you tune it any differently? And the thing is, there is a standard tuning for the guitar that most guitar music is played in, but there are other ways you can tune the guitar, other notes that you can tune individual strings to, and it's not wrong, it's just different. It's what's called an alternative tuning. I thought I'd talk about those a little bit. Now, I'm by no means an expert. A lot of alternate tunings come up in acoustic music. I'm not a great acoustic guitarist, but what I thought to do is just show you the general idea, and if it really interests you, there's plenty of resources out there on YouTube and elsewhere on the internet. You can go and research and learn a bit for yourself. I'll just show you the general idea and introduce you to the concept. First tuning I want to look at is what's called down tuning. What that involves is taking the guitar as it's normally tuned and basically tuning all of the strings down in parallel. And typically this is done down to like an E flat tuning, where all of the strings are tuned down by one semitone. So if you think you normally tune to an E, A, D, G, B, E, you'd be tuned down to an E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, E flat, or take it down by two semitones to a step down to a D. So you've got D, G, C, F, A, and D. We'll do that now and you can hear the difference. Now the reason that you do this sort of down tuning is it gives you access to notes in obviously in a lower register. That gives you a much heavier voice to the guitar, and that's why this sort of down tuning, as it's called, often gets used in like rock and metal music. So let's start with something guitar in standard tuning: E, A, D, G, B, E. Now let's take the guitar down two semitones on each string. Okay, so what I've got here, tune the guitar down, so instead of from low to high, E, A, D, G, B, E, I've got D, G, C, F, A, and D. So the guitar tuning itself is still, each string relative to each other, the same, but everything's been dropped by two semitones. Let's just hear how that sounds. Now that sounds a lot heavier. Basically we've got some access to notes that aren't normally within the range of the guitar because we've taken them down by two semitones, and it really starts to get much richer and heavier in sound down there. Let's talk quickly about string gauges. Normal guitar tuning, you will have your string gauge that you use, how thick the strings are. If you get into alternative tunings, when you're tuning down, there's going to be less tension in those strings, because if you think about it, you need a certain amount of tension to get a string up to pitch. If you go into a lower pitch, you need less tension, so these strings actually feel a little bit looser, a bit floppier than they normally would. So if you're getting into alternative tunings where you're tuning the guitar down by one, two, or even three semitones, what you might want to consider doing is taking a string gauge which is heavier, going down one, possibly two string gauges to something thicker, because of the ratio between pitch and string thickness and the tension in the string. Because to get the string to pitch with a heavier gauge string, you need a little bit more tension. So whereas I'm playing like 9 to 42s here, and they're feeling a little bit floppy because I've tuned down by two semitones, if I was playing with a set of 10s or a set of 11s, I'd need more tension in those strings. So when I tune them to a drop tuning like this, which is 2 semitones lower than normal tuning, the amount of tension in the strings would probably feel about the same as a lighter gauge of strings, my normal 9 set, that's tuned to normal tuning, if you see what I mean. You also get the added benefit if you're tuning down and you're using a heavier gauge string. It's heavier, it's physically more metal in the string, and you do get a thicker sound because of the string gauge, and so it just sounds heavier, so that works to your benefit as well. You can have a bit of a problem if you're playing between normal tuning and alternative tuning, you know, just by tuning your guitar normally, because your guitar will be set up in a particular way for a particular string gauge. And don't forget that within the neck here you've got the metal rod called the truss rod that balances the tension in the strings against the neck, and if you tune the strings more tightly or more slack, the truss rod's going to pull or be pulled by the string tension. So if you're tuning down, there's less for the truss rod to pull against, and it'll affect the action of the guitar. So ideally, if you're getting into playing different tunings of different songs, you might want to have 2 guitars, one for one tuning, one for the other. If you're getting it to keep changing the tuning on the one guitar, the action might get a little bit funny. Also, you've noticed I'm playing this guitar, it's got a stop tailpiece. If you've got a guitar with a tremolo or a whammy bar, particularly if it's set up floating so it moves up and down, it's a nightmare to change the tuning on a guitar on the fly, because as you're changing the tuning with the tuning pegs, the tremolo is going to move backwards and forwards. So if you're getting into changing tuning just on the one guitar between songs, really the only practical way to do it is a guitar like this that's got the stop tailpiece, because you can tune each string independently. Okay, so that's some of the practicalities. What we've looked at there is what's called a drop tuning, where all the strings are taken down. Now there's another tuning that you might come across which is called drop D, and basically this is like standard tuning, but the bottom string, rather than being tuned to an E, is tuned to a D. This gives you the advantage that you've got the big heavy D bass note if you want to chug on that for some really heavy rhythms, but you need to be mindful that the layout of the fingerboard has changed, and where you would normally find notes on the bottom string at one place, there are going to be 2 semitones out, 2 frets out, when you've got the bottom string tuned down to a D rather than an E. As an example, take a look at this screenshot from PhatPhish with a guitar in normal tuning, and then we'll look at the same scale with it in drop D. Now here we've been talking about tuning the guitar down. Would you ever need to tune the guitar up? Well, you could do, but don't forget you've got another option, namely something like a capo that you can put on the guitar neck, and rather than tuning all the strings up in parallel, just putting the capo on say on the 3rd fret here as an example, that's the same as tuning all of the guitar strings up by 3 semitones, treating that 3rd fret then as the nut, the open string. Using the capo basically gives you like an up tuning with all the strings in parallel. One other alternative tuning I want to look at, and that's the idea of tuning the guitar to an open chord. So here's the guitar back in normal E, A, D, G, B, E tuning, and what I'm going to think about now is tuning the guitar to a chord. So if I think of a open position E major chord, where I've got an open E string, A string fretted at the 2nd fret to give us a B, D string fretted at the 2nd fret to give us an E, G string fretted at the 1st fret to give us an G sharp, and then open B, D string, E major chord. What I'm going to do is take the fretted notes here, the A string, the D string, and the G string, and tune those up so that the open string sounds like the fretted note. So I'm going to take A, tune it to a B, D, tune it up to an E, G, and tune it up to a G sharp. Now I've got the guitar tuned to an open E major chord. So without fretting any notes, we get the sound of the chord E, B, E, G sharp, B, and E. And there's one more thing that I need to show you this, and it's one of these. It's what's called a bottleneck or a slide. This is a tubular piece of glass, or you can get them made out of metal, and the idea is that you put this across the strings to fret the notes. Gets used a lot in blues music. And the idea is by having the guitar tuned to an open chord, wherever the bottleneck is, any ambient noise is still a chord. It's still something musical. And you can get some really nice sounds just by sliding the slide up the guitar neck when it's tuned to an open chord. Now obviously when you're getting into different tunings for the guitar, the notes on the strings rearrange themselves. Now PhatPhish is quite a useful tool for being able to reorientate yourself on the neck, because if you go into the tunings menu, you can pick some alternative tunings, or you can come up with tunings of your own. And when you change the tuning on the guitar within PhatPhish, it'll rearrange the notes of the scale that you're looking at and show you how the notes will be represented in a different tuning, like this. So hopefully there I've been able to give you an introduction to the idea of alternative tunings. There's no right way or wrong way to tune a guitar necessarily. The standard tuning, which you'll hear most of the time, but there are other ways to tune the guitar. If you're into heavy metal and heavy rock, the drop tunings are quite common because they give you that heavier sound, that thicker sound that you can't get with standard tuning. The acoustic guitar world, there's all manner of alternative tunings. As I said, I'm not an expert in these. I don't play a whole lot of acoustic guitar with alternative tunings, but if you look at YouTube and elsewhere on the internet, there's all sorts of places where you can find more information. So hopefully this is just giving you an awareness of the idea, and it'll inspire you to go off and experiment and see what other ideas are out there. So hope you found that